Okay, and welcome to the Outhaus, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Pete Smith, Outhaus orator and telemarker. I'd just like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we're teaching and learning on today, and very excited to be discussing gear, and specifically camping and expedition gear in a post-pandemic world, and how we're going to deal with that. We've got a couple of representatives from two equipment companies, Wilderness Equipment and One Planet, and we're going to hear from those folks in a moment. I'd just like to acknowledge also the ongoing support of ACU for providing this Zoom platform to run this meeting. And lastly, thanks to the Outhaus management team for their tireless work in supporting me in running this forum, and also specific thanks, and those people from the top are Ellen Barker from PLC Perth, and David Maskell from Southeast Queensland, and Cherie Mullen from New South Wales. And without them, I would be at a loss as to how to do any of this. So those guys are really supporting me in a great way. Without any further ado, I think we're going to throw over to our first presenter. Oh, just before I do that, I just want to remind you guys, Inside the Outhouse has quite an extensive SharePoint site in which we have lots of information regarding previous chats, video recordings of those chats, and also any documents or web links that have been shared from various members. Also, if you'd like to like us on the socials, that would be LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm going to now throw over to Henry Kelsey from Wilderness Equipment to give our first presentation. Thanks, Henry.
Thanks, Pete, and good afternoon, everyone. As Pete did mention, there is the extensive resources available in the SharePoint, and Ellen has been kind enough to upload for me on Friday afternoon a two-page fact sheet on how to clean equipment for outdoor education to prevent the spread of the coronavirus disease. And thank you, David, for sharing that through social media as well. It's now been seen by, I think, about 20,000 people, which is fantastic. Just this afternoon, I've provided another document, which is a 6-pager, which provides a bit more background information into that, including a complete evaluation of chemical disinfectants for use with equipment for outdoor education. I'll be using that as my reference material for this presentation. So if you guys haven't jumped over to the share file and downloaded it yet, it would be awesome if you can do so. I'll be sharing my screen so that you can follow along with me, but it's also just good to have it so you can, share it with people and have it to refer to after the session yourself. I'd just like to preface what I'm going to say with a little bit of an introduction to provide some background, and then also sort of, I guess, provide information as to sort of our position as equipment manufacturers. So we are equipment manufacturers. Textiles engineering is our area of expertise. We're not virologists, and we're not set up with the necessary equipment to test the efficacy of various sanitation chemicals or techniques. This being the case, it is best to stand by the government recommendations because, they do have virologists and chemists, and then use our expertise to adapt their recommendations for outdoor education equipment. It's not really our place to recommend methods that are not prescribed by the government, because I feel like that's a bit of a jump outside of our box. I'd also mention that my brother is a researcher at the Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research here in Perth, which is attached to the hospital. And he worked with the Western Australian Department of Health on the COVID-19 response locally. As a part of this response, he and his team prepared a face shield for feedback from clinicians. and evaluation by the Department of Health. We provided some sewing consultation informally in the prototyping phase, but the length of the certification process for production of medical grade equipment meant that we did not continue our involvement in that project into production. Our closeness to that project, even if our involvement was informal, has given us some insights which have definitely helped in preparation for this session today. I'll share my screen now and we'll have a bit of a look at the document that I have prepared, which is the full guide to cleaning equipment for outdoor education to prevent the spread of the coronavirus disease. As I said in my intro, I really don't think that it's our place to sort of make recommendations that are those provided by the government, but definitely because of what we know, we can say whether their recommendations are appropriate and also assess other alternatives and then also say why those wouldn't be appropriate too. So as I'm sure we all have a great understanding of now because we've been living with this for a few months, cleaning means physically removing germs, dirt and organic matter from surfaces, whereas disinfecting means using chemicals to kill the germs on those surfaces. From an outdoor education point of view, obviously being in the bush, things get dirty. So a combination of cleaning and disinfecting is going to be the most effective thing to do because disinfecting can be inhibited by presence of organic matter like dirt and other things. I'm not going to provide recommendations about cleaning frequency for outdoor education departments because I'm sure you guys all have a better idea internally of what's practical and what's going to work for you. And I know that everyone's schools are going to be running on slightly different programs, just depending on what the schools define as being the best thing to do. So rather than, sort of telling you how I think something should be done, I'll just give you the tools and then you can apply it in the setting that works best for your environment. So the Australian Department of Health has recommended that for routine cleaning, disinfectants are only normally necessary if a surface has been contaminated with a potentially infectious material. Different environments have different likelihood of infectious materials being present, and so different environments obviously can be cleaned in different ways to deal with the possible threat. We know that, say, in an outdoor education setting, there's going to be much less likelihood for contamination from contact of a commonly touched surface, like a door or a desk, simply because those surfaces are not present. I think shared equipment can be limited to cooking and sleeping pairs or groups, but I find the idea that you could socially distance within a pair sharing a tent or sharing cooking equipment to be very difficult due to the close proximity and shared equipment. We have been getting some people getting in contact asking about adaptations that we would be able to provide to them for wilderness equipment tents. For example, like a lining screen that could be retrofitted in the middle of a two-person tent to provide a physical barrier between two occupants in the idea of providing social distancing within a tent. We have basically said that we're not going to do that because I don't see how, with the air permeability of an inner tent, having a barrier in there is actually going to be able to stop the flow of breath and air back and forth over the top of the barrier. And then when the tent's collapsed, all of the surfaces contact one another and get mixed in together. So I didn't sort of think that that was going to be a great solution. So we're just sort of focusing on, you guys know what is right for your workplaces, and we'll just say, here's how we think they can be cleaned and disinfected. So synthetic backpacks, so those made from nylon or polyester, they can be cleaned using a soft brush with a neutral detergent. Neutral detergents, if you just type into Google like where to buy a neutral detergent, you get heaps of options now. And of course, because we're all geographically diverse, certain places to source these materials are going to work for some people but aren't going to work for others. So I'd like to look at sourcing locally because I can't sort of provide recommendations everywhere in Australia. Never machine wash basically any packs or tents or anything like that. And everything that we have can be disinfected with methylated spirits. We don't want to clean canvas backpacks with detergents, unlike synthetic ones, because the natural fiber content of the canvas, the cotton content will take on detergents, and they're very difficult to rinse out. So the cleaning instruction for those is to clean them with warm water, and then because you haven't had the action of the surfactant killing the virus, you still then do need to do a secondary disinfection with methylated spirits applied in a spray bottle. Tents and shelters can all be cleaned with a neutral detergent. They can be disinfected with methylated spirits, and they can also be soaked in a weak bleach solution. So 1 in 1,000 and 1 to 1,000 for 5 minutes, and then rinse thoroughly afterwards. That won't cause any harm to the shelter, and is an effective way of dealing with that. Outdoor clothing and rainwear, the cleaning instruction for rainwear is the same as what it normally is, and that is to clean using a small amount of neutral detergent and then rinse it twice. That's going to be effective from a cleaning to prevent the spread of a virus point of view, but that's a normal recommended cleaning system anyway, even in non-COVID times. Really important that you don't use a soap to clean waterproof garments. You have to use a detergent, because this soap will leave behind a residue. It'll get stuck in the membrane and you won't be able to clean it out easily, and that will provide some performance issues down the track. Same for warm wear, can be washed in a washing machine with a neutral detergent, just the same as the rainwear. You can disinfect warm wear with methylated spirits applied using a spray bottle, but because of the nature of the fabric, it is a less effective option. So we'll just focus on using the washing technique to ensure you're preventing the spread of the virus. Now, these recommendations are basically just an extension of what our normal cleaning recommendations is, and it's just very convenient that to prevent the spread of the virus. And it's also really important for me to say that, you know, cleaning something with a detergent, it's not just a matter of cleaning the virus off. It's not like you clean it and then it just sort of like gets washed out into the drain or whatever. The way that the detergent works as a surfactant is that it attacks the virus in the same way that it attacks fats. So you can imagine if you're like washing the dishes and you have sort of like greasy water or whatever, and you put a squeeze of detergent in there, and you can see the surface tension get broken and the fats separate. It's exactly the same with the virus. The detergent actually works to break down the fatty shell of the virus, and because it's got relatively weak chemical bonds, it then just disintegrates and becomes water soluble and disappears. Our recommendation of a detergent with a pH between 6 and 8 aligns perfectly with the Australian Government Department of Health guidelines. Methylated spirits works on the virus in the same way as the detergent. It just breaks down that fatty lipid bilayer that surrounds the virus. But it's really important that the surface that you're spraying the metho onto, it needs to be completely saturated for a period of at least 30 seconds before evaporation to ensure the complete destruction of the virus. If you do some dilution, it will help slow the evaporation of the methylated spirits, which can increase effectiveness, but you just need to make sure that you don't dilute it too far, because if you dilute it too far, the alcohol content will reduce below 60%, then it won't be effective anymore. It needs to be in the range of more than 60%. The sort of ideal numbers between 60 and 80%, and pure meths is about 95%. So that's when you really need to make sure that you're saturating the surface to sort of counteract the natural speedy evaporation of the methylated spirits. We're also recommending the detergent, bleach and methylated spirits rather than other methods, because they're relatively easy to obtain, and are also things that I imagine would be very common from a outdoor education point of view, whether it's detergent being used for cleaning or methylated spirits for use with transient stoves. And we know how to handle those. We know how to dispose of them. We don't need to introduce new chemical management systems to deal with things that we're unfamiliar with. And then we don't need to look into, what are the other options and what are the environmental implications of those things, which was a question that Ellen had asked of me. In getting to this recommendation, I did do a complete evaluation of chemical disinfectants, and this has been taken from Disinfection 101, which was made by the Center for Food Security and Public Health, Iowa University. This is, they're focusing on trying to contain viruses within like agricultural settings, and have given a full rundown on the various kinds of chemical disinfectants there are. I've basically taken that information and then I've given it appropriate for disinfecting COVID-19 on equipment for outdoor education. So we know that acids are bad because acids destroy nylon, so we can avoid that. Alcohols are good, so methylated spirits, it's recommended by the Australian government and it doesn't have any negative long-term effects on outdoor equipment. Aldehydes, so like formaldehyde, are really for like medical settings and super irritating, toxic, very strict usage techniques, not recommended. And alkalis are also not recommended because in the same way that acids destroy nylon, alkalis destroy polyester. So that's sort of like a golden rule of outdoor equipment, is that you want to stay away from acids and alkalis because it will kill everything that we have from a gear point of view, not from a virus point of view. Halogens like chlorine, absolutely yes, can use them. We have a recommendation on how to dilute it, and that's also supported by the Australian government recommendations. Oxidizing agents are a no, they damage to textiles. Phenols are also a no because the effective concentration to get a virucidal effect is highly toxic to all animals, so let's just stay away from that. And quaternary ammonium compounds, so CACs, we've also recommended them as a no because they're easily inactivated by organic matter, so you need to make sure that your item is completely 100% clean, and organic matter, of course, is a bit of an issue in outdoor education fleet management. They're also made ineffective by detergents, soaps and hard waters, so you really need to make sure you're operating in an ideal sort of environment to use those as a sanitizer. So we've said no. Additionally, they're toxic to fish, and they are residual on surfaces, which just provide some sort of longer sanitation effect, but I'm not sure then what the effect of that's going to be in terms of like mixing with the environment. Here are our recommendations for diluting bleach. Look for the middle line, and this is the Australian government recommendation, and we've just said, yep, that works for outdoor equipment. There's not going to be any damage caused. And then I have also provided reference materials. So what's this based on? Because I've just gone out and looked at what is the research that other people have done, and then how does that apply to this scenario. In follow-up to this session, of course, I imagine that I'm going to field quite a few questions, and my contact details are on there. You can just email me directly, henry@wildernessequipment.com.au, and I'll be more than happy to help. So that is me done. And I guess we can crack into Ben, or are we going to have questions for me first?
Let's crack into Ben, and we'll have questions following Ben's presentation, if that's good with everyone.
Perfect. Wicked.
All right, sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Weiser. I've met some of you before, but not all of you. Just to introduce myself, I've been working here at One Planet for the last 5 years. My role here is marketing, and I've got a background in design research and innovation practices. Today, I'll be presenting our guidelines for maintaining equipment and the supplementary research and testing behind it. Specifically focusing, again, like Henry was, on the use of disinfectants on equipment. So I'll share my screen now and we'll go through it. All right, cool. So equipment hygiene has become an essential part of risk management for schools and institutions in 2020, specifically for outdoor equipment that may be used by multiple users within a short time frame. Our aim is to provide and maintain quality equipment whilst keeping kids safe and making life easy for teachers and leaders. To this end, we've developed our guidelines for cleaning and maintenance. To understand our documentation, which is of course available in the SharePoint and on the One Planet website, we'll go through a couple of key definitions. So cleaning is to free from dirt and contamination, whilst sanitizing is ridding a surface of contaminants and killing germs. And disinfecting is to free from infection by destroying harmful microorganisms. What's key to the use of disinfectants is what is that disinfectant effective against, so which types of bacteria, virus, or other microorganisms, and the dwell time. So how long does it take to achieve what's called a log6 reduction, which is your 99.9% reduction in microorganisms. So as we know, in 2020, there's general concern about the risk of coronavirus, and specifically in this setting, the spread of infection on outdoor equipment via the contact with droplets from an infected person's cough or sneeze. That's what is written on health.gov.au, and show how recent and important this is. In Victoria, over the weekend, there was 12 additional cases, and as well, an announcement detailing the lessening of restrictions. So I thought I would get a little bit into how do we know about this risk. On the 16th of April, there was research published in the New England Journal of Medicine. It found that SARS-CoV-2 can survive for hours and in some cases days outside a host, depends on the surface. Under experimental conditions, it found the virus viable in the air for an entire 3-hour experiment, and it could still be detected on stainless steel and surfaces, plastic surfaces, up to 72 hours later. It's important, I think, to note that textiles weren't tested in this experiment. So to talk about managing risk, obviously the first step to maintain good hygiene and for the longevity of your equipment is a thorough cleaning of all One Planet gear after each journey. And of course, making sure when gear is stored, it's dry and clean. But to manage risk in 2020, servicing may also include the use of a sanitizer or disinfectant. So within this space, we've identified a couple of key challenges. That is that One Planet equipment is manufactured from a wide variety of materials and components, which include coated and uncoated surfaces, textiles, and textiles of a porous and non-porous nature. The other major challenge is that schools and institutions, as you all know, may be time poor, and gear may need to be serviced and cleaned during journeys or with a very fast turnaround. So what we're looking for is an effective disinfectant that would be easy to use, fast acting, and highly effective against microorganisms, whilst also being effective on hard surfaces, porous surfaces, and not damaging to outdoor equipment. Early in the COVID-19 global pandemic, we approached Advanced Chemicals, which is a local chemical supplier of ours, and talked to them about what solutions they might have to the challenges we were facing then, and also what the challenges we thought we might face in the future. In the beginning of June, they informed us about a new product called Adsense LN1856. It's a virucidal disinfectant and sanitizer. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to shorten the name to Adsense so I don't have to repeat myself all the time. So what is Adsense? It's basically a ready-to-use virucidal disinfectant that's effective on non-porous and porous surfaces. It's a quaternary ammonium compound disinfectant, so a QAC, and it's proven to kill a broad spectrum of microorganisms, including bacteria, yeast, viruses, mold, fungi, algae, with a log 6 reduction. So that's your 99.9% reduction in microorganisms. How do we know that this kind of disinfectant and this product is indeed effective? So it's modeled on a ready-to-use quaternary ammonium disinfectant that's listed on the United States Environmental Protection Agency's list N. List N is basically a list of registered products that claim virucidal kill for use against SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes COVID-19. You can see a link to the list there. Disinfectants on this list have not been specifically tested against SARS-CoV-2, but the EPA does expect them to kill the virus because they have effectiveness against a harder to kill virus, or they demonstrate effectiveness against another type of human coronavirus, so MERS or SARS. There are other potential sanitizing and disinfecting agents, but all of those have their own challenges. 3 of the popular ones are chlorine bleach, so you know this as White King or bleach. Again, effective at killing microorganisms, but it has to be at high concentration, particularly harsh, and can definitely cause damage to gear. It's also dangerous if not used correctly. Another one is a hydrogen peroxide compound. So you might know these as SARD or vanish powders. Again, effective at killing microorganisms. Certainly safer to use than bleach, but once diluted and ready to use, they have a limited useful lifespan, so challenging in this setting. And the third most popular is alcohol, so methanol, ethanol, or isopropanol. Common one is methylated spirits, which can be effective at killing microorganisms, but does need to be of a sufficiently high concentration to be effective. And they do evaporate quickly, becoming less effective over time. Also flammable. So we believe that Adsan is a good choice because quaternary ammonium compound disinfectants are generally used as food grade sanitizers. And indeed, they may already be in use within your institution in maybe the canteen or the gym. This particular one can be applied via spray when you leave it for 2 minutes to make sure you get that 99.9% reduction. You can also apply it via immersion, in which case leave it for 1 to 5 minutes. And it's also been particularly engineered to tolerate a light soil load without losing effectiveness. It will not harm plastics or fabrics and is corrosion safe on metal, which is ideal. It's effective on non-porous and porous surfaces. So all those together mean that we think it's a really good choice for the use on outdoor equipment. Importantly, it's Australian made and can be sourced in bulk quantities. So it has a long and stable shelf life. As well, it is low odor, low irritancy, and non-flammable. So safe and simple to use with young people. In the One Planet factory, we manufacture rucksacks, rainwear, gaiters, down sleeping bags, and various other accessories. Many of you will know this. What you might not know is that we also run a hire fleet. It has approximately 250 sets of rucksacks, tarps, tents, rainwear, sleeping bags, and more. It's these products that we've been doing our testing on, which we think is ideal because it's a similar fleet to what you would be running in your institution. So our study was designed to test whether Adsan was harmful to our products and whether it was safe to use in school settings. And I'm happy to say that the results are overwhelmingly positive. So how can we integrate these kinds of practices for disinfecting into our additional cleaning measures? We understand that for gear maintenance and performance, washing as per your standard practices is a must, but the next step is definitely implementing and servicing with a disinfectant. So when it comes to backpacks and tents, flies, gaiters, and accessories, things we've tested in our factory, to maintain hygiene, we simply spray the Adsan onto the product, then leave it in the field or the gear shed and allow it to dry before packing it away. So it's very simple and easy to use. With rainwear and sleeping bags, obviously at the moment we're undergoing testing. So what we do recommend is the use of Nikwax products. This is what we commonly use within our servicing. So maybe products like Nikwax Tech Wash, TX Direct, Downwash, or Downproof. What we're working on at the moment is testing the use of Adsense as a concentrate and also as a washing agent or spray application on these particular products. The reason we're doing this is because we believe that a wash-in concentrate would be ideal from an ease of use perspective. It's the most efficient way to maintain your gear. Hand wash bags and dribblers. This is a popular product in the outdoor education circle. When it comes to maintaining the hygiene on this particular product, we do recommend removing the bladder inserts. You can wash and clean these in hot soapy water. And then if you want to, use the Adsense spray or as a spray on the exterior area and also the dribbler. So in summary, we believe that Adsense virucidal disinfectant and sanitizer to be an ideal choice improving hygiene and managing risk in 2020. It's effective against viruses, proven to be effective. It's easily and simply applied either via spray or immersion, and it's being tested on One Planet equipment, which is ideal. Of course, it's safe to use and to transport. Also important to mention, we actually don't have any commercial relationship with advanced chemicals. And the active ingredients in Adsense are commonly used as food grade sanitizers. So you may already have a relationship with your local supplier. On the One Planet website and also on the SharePoint is a series of different documentation, including our guidelines for maintaining and guidelines for maintenance and equipment, and also the research and supplementary documentation behind our decisions and choices, as well as the safety data sheets and information sheets directly from Advanced Chemicals. I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about some new developments we've been working on. Probably much like yourselves in 2020, our focus changed pretty early on. Firstly, moved to worker safety, both in our factory, dispatch area, office, also our CBD shop in Melbourne. And after that, we went towards cleaning and servicing, and this is where we started to develop and understand these new practices. Following that, we've started to problem solve physical distancing challenges in the outdoors. We developed in this space a Whirly 3 tent divider, which is an interesting little product that we can retrofit to your Whirly 3 tents, basically converting a Whirly 3 into a physically distant space for two. The full scale divider can be sewn diagonally into the top binding, and the coated nylon choice provides a nice vapor barrier between young people, and it's also easily removable at a later date. It's kind of an interesting product that we've developed. As of yet, it hasn't really been too popular. Most groups seem to prefer to bolster their fleet with options from our hire. However, in this space, we are continuing to research and develop. And that's it. So all of the information is up on oneplanet.com.au. If you go to our outdoor education page, and you're also welcome to contact our factory directly via sales@OnePlanet. You can chat to myself or any of the other team here. And thank you all for listening. Please do share the information and get it around.
Hey, Ben, thanks very much for the presentation. We actually don't have that link of your presentation that you've just shown. There's a lot of people in the chat who would love it. Could you post that directly into the chat through the file system? You hit on file, you can upload that. Yeah, if just directly, and then you can send it through to Ellen and we can post it on SharePoint later. Lots of folks.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thanks very much. I think we're out for questions.
So we've had a few questions. The first one we got what would be the best to use on metal and toweling equipment?
Metal and towel. Look, what we've done is tested it on all of the One Planet equipment that we have. So the particular materials and particular products. We're obviously testing on some other equipment that we've got within our hire fleet, but we can't really comment on the efficacy of it and how good it would be on particular metals or things like thermarest as of yet.
Given that we've been following the government recommendations and adapting them for outdoor education, we know from the government recommendations that alcohol works perfectly to kill things on metal. And if you were looking to kill a virus on a toweling type product, washing in a neutral detergent with a pH of between 6 and 8 would do that. I personally, as an opinion, don't think that using an alcohol spray on a toweling surface will work very well due to its porous nature.
Okay, thank you. Next question is it important for disinfectants to have a long life after application? Example, you mentioned metho evaporates. So does it knock out the virus and then evaporate kind of thing? Job done.
Yep, so it's really important that the surface is completely covered in the alcohol for a period of no less than 30 seconds. Pure methylated spirits does evaporate more quickly than diluted methylated spirits. Anything that has a alcohol content of between 60 and 80% will probably find like an ideal niche in terms of effectiveness at destroying the virus and slower evaporation. But yeah, you do need to make sure whatever mix you're using, that it is higher than 60% alcohol content and that it spends at least 30 seconds on the surface to ensure that the virus has been completely destroyed.
Yeah, I'd have to say when using any of these like disinfectants or sanitizing products, when it comes to testing how well or understanding how well it will kill a particular virus, you should look at the information sheets that are provided by that particular supplier and also the safety data sheet that also will have information about personal protective equipment. And that stuff's really important to understand to make sure you're doing the right job.
Awesome, thanks guys. Has either Wilderness Equipment or One Planet seen a reduction in lifespan or coloring on the tested equipment using the individual recommended chemicals, metho and Adsense?
We haven't seen any sort of negative effect or discoloration. It's not in contact with the surface of any of these things long enough to have any kind of effect on the actual condition of the fabric. And really, you know, for outdoor equipment, there's only sort of solvents like paint thinners and acetone are the only sort of like hardware available, things like this that would actually have a negative effect on outdoor equipment. So no sort of detriment caused by metho.
Okay.
With our testing processes, one of the first things we did was basically soak various pieces of material in the solution, the Adsense solution, and we left it for then 72 hours. Then we dried it naturally, so just air dry and in the sunlight, and then we test the performance of it. At the moment, since doing that, we now test via spray on the same pieces of material and then continue to test the performance. And we've been doing that for about 2 weeks now. We haven't found any loss in performance over that time on the products I mentioned, as well as the information.
Great. A few more questions if we have time. If we're running out of time, anybody stop me. So we have best option for neoprene products. Do you have any recommendations for those?
We don't actually have any of our products that use neoprene, so I'm not too sure on that. Might leave that for somebody else to answer.
We also haven't done any testing on neoprene, but I do know as a surfer that wetsuits don't respond very well to being washed. The porous nature of those fabrics as well means that if you used a detergent on them, it would you'd probably go for a surf and start bubbling up the ocean. So I would have sort of questions about usage beyond that. But I can happily say that methylated spirits would be an appropriate disinfectant to use on neoprene, but the porous nature of the surface of the fabric means that it would probably actually be quite effective because it wouldn't evaporate quite so quickly. But as I said, haven't tested it, just following Australian government recommendations and saying how appropriate they are going to be for use on outdoor equipment.
Awesome. Maybe if anybody does find any information on that, they can add it to the SharePoint later. I know on the SharePoint, we've recently added some information about climbing ropes as well as climbing equipment. We have, how do the disinfectants mentioned here compare with the advice of others leaving the fabric for a minimum of 72 hours between uses?
I think Ben's research that he shared at the beginning of his presentation was really interesting on that. I have seen some research which says that in certain materials, they actually have detected the virus at a greater interval than they had initially thought. So while we do know that it will last for a certain amount of time, I think that doing a combination of cleaning and disinfecting would definitely be the thing to do, because we just simply don't know exactly what's going to happen after 72 hours. Because there's basically research that is sort of building every day, and some things are contrary to one another.
Yeah, I would have to agree that obviously hasn't been a huge amount of research in this space. Even that one study from the New England Journal of Medicine didn't include textiles, but it did include plastics and metals, which is really important. So I think you need to assume maybe the worst and go for at least 72 hours by using the proper procedures and making sure your disinfectant will do the right job.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate that. If anybody else has any questions, I haven't seen any others in the chat. If I've missed any, please feel free to, I guess, take a moment if anybody does have a question to either put it in the chat and I will ask, or speak up.
Or people at this point can just ask questions of the group from, you know, using their microphone.
I come in midway through, but I was just asking about, did you guys discuss climbing equipment and harnesses and PPE and ropes?
We didn't, but I understand maybe, Ellen, is there going to be a separate session on that with climbing equipment manufacturers?
Yeah, based on the interest and the kind of questions and what information people are looking for in this session, we were considering a follow-up session in a couple of weeks based on vertical roping equipment. If you are keen, let us know in the chat and then we'll see what we can do.
And just adding to that, there's some fairly informative information already on the SharePoint site from a range of climbing rope and climbing gear manufacturing companies about how to clean their specific equipment. So look for that, and we'll definitely run a session on that. This was sort of more focused on camping and expedition type equipment, I guess.
How do you guys, in regards to in between changeovers for doing a quick disinfect for kids, how are we going to get about that one?
I think,
oh yeah, go for it, Henry.
Oh, thanks, mate. Sorry, in my introduction, I said I don't think that it's up to me to provide recommendations for individual practitioners on how best to manage their fleets. Obviously, this is something that is going to be quite difficult to get back out quickly. But I guess if you apply these tools in a way that helps you do that, that's fantastic. But yeah, it's definitely something that's difficult and needs to be managed.
Yeah, we've just got between two sessions, we've got about like a half-hour gap to try and disinfect bits and pieces, which with kids and then the COVID, it's trying to keep everyone happy and keep everything clean for everyone. We can't replace everything straight up.
Yeah, I guess in that case, if there's not any significant organic matter loading the various pieces of equipment, which is going to affect its ability to be disinfected with a spray, then you should be able to do a spray disinfectant, making sure to follow all of the guidelines for whichever product you choose to use. And that would probably be the way in which you'd be able to get a turnaround in a time where you can't actually do a clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree. The product that we've been using, Adsense, it does work to kill viruses with a 99.9% reduction within 2 minutes if you spray it on the surface. So that was one of the reasons that we actually were starting to look towards these kinds of products. We can imagine that it would be fairly simple and easy to spray onto the contact areas of the harness between users, or spray onto the gaiters, or if you've got the tent set up between sessions, you could have it spray on the tent, leave the doors open, and it will dry really quite quickly, and then it can be effectively used by the next group. So we think that's a good choice.
Alrighties. Thanks for that.
Hey Ben, just in follow up to that, mate, in my research, I did come across some things suggesting that QACs provided, there was sort of some strange things around respiratory damage, and they had done some, research saying that it's maybe not great to use in a confined space. Have you guys sort of found anything like that when it comes to sanitizing the interiors of tents, even with the doors open?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. We haven't found any problems like that. However, I would say that nearly all disinfectants are going to be pretty harsh in some way or another. It's really important, as I said before, like look at the safety data sheet, look at the information sheet that comes from that particular chemical supplier, and make sure you're doing everything that they say. In the case of Adsense that we use, it does recommend when you look at the safety data sheet that you should probably wear goggles, and that's the required PPE for this particular chemical. So it is safe and good to use with young people.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Although if they weren't a little bit harsh, they wouldn't work. So
exactly, you're right.
That's a key part for all of this, is understanding any hazards that we might be introducing to deal with the COVID-19 issues as far as any control measures. And that's actually something we're looking at putting in the industry plan for Queensland, is to review your existing safety management system for any additional hazards that might have been introduced due to control measures. So it is an important step, and understanding that in the safety data sheet is critical, I think.
We've had another question in the thing, but I think it's more geared towards harnesses. So if it's something that we need to, we will answer in future sessions. But if you guys feel like you could address it, won't the body oils from a harness need to be washed out with soap? This thus negating the effect of a disinfectant. Same on climbing equipment. So that's kind of towards climbing, but.
So I guess the thing is that we know that soaps act upon the virus in the same way that the disinfectants do, and that is to break down the fatty layer that provides the shell. And it's not just soaps, it's like we're recommending a detergent, which is, very slightly different to a soap, but they're both surfactants, and all surfactants will actually get stuck into the virus. So if you have used something to effectively clean body oils out of a harness, that same product would also have worked to destroy the virus. And so it would mean that, it's not necessary to do a disinfectant process, but we are recommending to clean and disinfect to make sure that you've nailed it 100%.
Gents, can I just ask, do you guys have any different procedures compared to just general cleaning to manage COVID-19 risk compared to if there is a confirmed case? Is there any difference in your procedures that you're recommending?
So from an actual cleaning point of view, a cleaning and disinfecting point of view, there is no difference in the procedure when there is a confirmed case. But I imagine that it's everything that happens outside of the actual cleaning and disinfecting procedure that's going to change, and that comes into, I guess, school management processes or centre management processes that are in place for dealing with the confirmed case and an outbreak, and then applying these processes within that framework that's been determined by the organisation. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right, Henry. It's we've been focusing mostly on how can we manage and reduce the risk of a virus transferring between users. When it does come down to a particular individual who is sick and does need to go and seek treatment, there's obviously going to be a lot more involved. and there's going to be a lot more procedures. And at the moment, we can't really comment on what you should do if you have a confirmed case. We've been focusing on just trying to manage any possible transference.
I get that, it's a fair point, but like, I guess what I really mean is, if there was like someone has, let's just say they had suspected case and they've been using that gear, are we saying it's exactly the same cleaning protocols and then that gear can be put back in, or do you think it's just up to the school or the organisation to make a decision on isolating all of that gear, or do you think these cleaning protocols are robust enough to just clean it and then keep on using it?
These cleaning protocols are certainly designed around complete virus destruction. So I guess the thing is that if there isn't a virus there, we're recommending, cleaning instructions that aren't going to do any harm to the gear. But if there is a virus there, they are going to knock it out completely. It's not a case of just because an infected person has been in contact with a piece of equipment that it sort of like needs to get, I don't know, turfed or something else like that. It's definitely, these cleaning recommendations are for viral destruction 100%. And they are an adaptation of, well, from our point of view, they're an adaptation of what the Australian Government Department of Health has put forward as best practice.
Yeah, I would absolutely have to agree. The procedures that we've described and the chemicals that we suggest are worth using, they will destroy the virus. Depends on your technique. If you're using a spray-on application, 1 to 2 minutes. If it's an immersion, 1 to 5 minutes. And as I said, we're still testing whether you can use it as a wash-in cycle and maybe for your rainwear in the washing machine and that kind of stuff. But yeah, the processes and the chemicals will undoubtedly kill viruses.
Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes to go in the Outhouse today, and what a inspiring and interesting discussion both Ben and Henry have provided for us. I would just like to say that that's incredibly informative, and I hope everyone in the Outhouse got a lot out of that. If you have any further questions, you can actually email me, peter.smith@acu.edu.au, and I will attempt to get those to the people, or you can email Ben and Henry directly, as they've already indicated, to answer further questions around gear. And there seems to be a fair bit of interest around the whole climbing and roping gear, so we'll probably have a further Outhouse discussion around that in the future. I would encourage you all to join us in the Outhouse again. It's a collaboration of outdoor educators and practitioners from across the country, and the more people are involved with their opinion from whatever the level and whatever position they're working from, the better the discussion is. So thanks very much to them and the Outhouse team. We always have a video of the week, so David will put that up into the group chat, and thanks very much for attending, and this is Pete signing off.